All right, guys, welcome. Thank you for taking the time tonight to come to our last meeting before the break. Really excited for what we have planned tonight, and we'll just get going. Without further ado, Logan, you want to kick it off with a D&I spotlight?
Yeah, so first off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who made it to our mixer last week. I think it was so much fun, and we did secure the trophy. So go PRSSA, and I hope that turns into an annual thing. So stay tuned for next year's. And then just one short announcement: the CAC Speakers Bureau is having Tan France come and speak to our OU community on LGBTQ rights. I thought that was such a fun opportunity. If you don't know who Tan France is, he is the fashion expert on Netflix's Queer Eye. So he will be doing a Zoom conversation on December 2nd at 7 p.m. I will make sure that link is sent out in our email, but yeah, I thought that was so fun. I'm going to try to be there, so go.
Awesome. That sounds exciting. Now we're going to skip breakout rooms tonight, and Jacob, back at it again one more time with dues.
Yep. So I'm pretty sure everyone in this call is a dues paying member, but still, if you're not, it's $65, which is raised. And now if you want the t-shirt bundle, it's $80. Remember, you can Venmo at OUPRSSA. And before you Venmo them, you have to fill out a form. So, yeah.
Sweet. And then if there's any seniors graduating in December, or even if you want to buy it early, graduating in the spring, you're graduating in 2 years, you want to buy it now so you have it, you can go ahead and buy a graduation stolen cord. It's $38 for both. And you just Venmo us and fill out the form here. And then tonight's speakers, PR extraordinaire family, the Batyko family, Erica, Bobby, and Rick. Erica's a communications associate at the Cleveland Clinic's Enterprise Analytics. Bobby's a social media strategist at University Hospitals, and Rick, APR, fellow PRSA, is a senior marketing and communications professional. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to them, and they can take it away.
Well, thanks, everybody. It's great to see you tonight. Hope everybody's staying safe. It's crazy times out there and everywhere, especially in colleges, campuses. And I'm a CMO for the YMCA in Greater Cleveland, and with gyms and pools and all that kind of thing. So we're fighting it every day, but no cases coming out of our place so far. So far, so good. Hey, we're talking about careers tonight. And so when I was originally asked to speak to you, I thought, well, that would be good. I have some thoughts. I have some ideas. Love to answer some questions. But I'd also like to bring a couple people with me who have graduated recently and who are young professionals who are making their way, both still involved with PRSA, I might add. So I thought it'd be fun if you guys didn't mind if I bring the family with me. We used to have a juggling act in the circus, but we thought, you know what? Probably a little more stable. And Dad's getting kind of old, you know, for the juggling thing. So we decided we'd move into PR. So thanks for having us tonight. Just a few comments, and then I'd like my guys to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their careers. I did go to Ohio University. That's where I graduated from, the other OU, and majored. I went there to be in journalism. I'm old, so I went to college at the time of Woodward and Bernstein and Nixon and Watergate and all of that. And I thought journalism sounded pretty cool because in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to be. And I had no idea what PR was. I mean, how many high school kids even today know what PR is? So I thought I'd go into journalism. And so I did. I had several colleges behind me, but let's just go to OU where I finished up. And when I was there, I decided, you know what? I'd heard about this PR thing. I got to know some people in PR. I went to a PRSSA meeting and I thought, wow, this seems like something that just feels more like me, you know, more engaging, more interacting, and also a strategy associated with it. And so I really liked all of that. and decided to plunge into it, and went really well for me. I really got good grades and really enjoyed it. Started my career in the nonprofit sector. I'm not going to give you my whole resume because I'll bore the heck out of you. But just so you know how I made the jump. Um, Actually, it was somebody came to speak to our class, when I was a senior. We had one class that was just talking about careers, and a woman came to our class to speak, and she talked about medical careers. How ironic that both my kids are in medical career and I'm not. But anyway, she talked about her work at a hospital, and I went up to her. I found her really interesting, and I asked her some questions and just talked to her a little bit, and then I went on my way and she went on her way. But she went back to where she came from, which is a place called Rio Grande, um, where there was a brand new college president, and he was looking for a PR person, but he didn't have much money, so he wanted somebody entry level. It was just a little college. And she said, funny thing, I just met this guy, and I think he's really good. I really liked him. He seemed really nice and all that. You might want to talk to him. And sure enough, they reached out to me, and 50 people applied for the job, but I was able to get it. So what an interesting way to start your career. I knew nobody in PR. I had no networks. If you don't know where our university is, but it's a place called Athens, Ohio, and that's Southeast Ohio in the middle of nowhere. So it wasn't a great place to network in your career. So it was interesting that that's how I ended up getting my very first job. But it was a real lesson to me in networking, a real lesson in trying to get into your field by getting to know people who are already there. And so lesson one, and I hope you're all doing that with Pritch involved here. I can't imagine you're not, but get to know your networks, get to know people in the field. If you're thinking that you're interested in a career in PR in a certain industry, a certain discipline, PRSA has tons of people in that industry. Maybe even in the same, maybe you're interested in a particular company or a particular nonprofit organization. Pretty good chance PRSA probably is a member in that organization, in that company. So please use your networking tools. I love it when somebody calls me out of the blue and says, hey, I'm interested in this, or I'm interested in this profession, and I know you've had some background in it. I've seen your LinkedIn. We love that. We love to give tips and advice, and who knows, never know when it's going to lead to a job. So after that, my career just went like a pinball game at the. You guys remember? Do you know pinball, by the way? I know it's not electronic in the today sense, but just everywhere. There, I imagine most people in PR, at least in our generation, and people younger than me, didn't come up through some logical path. My dad worked for the same company for 40 years, retired from there. I mean, it was his whole career. Gosh, I think I'm on 8 or 9, working for my 7th or 8th CEO. All over the place. I went from colleges to environmental services company to power generation company to Honeywell. You probably heard of Honeywell, corporate communications, just all over the map. And every one of those jumps was made because somebody knew me. I'll just give you one more example, and I'll turn it over to my guys so they can introduce themselves. But I was working at Babcock & Wilcox, which is a power generation company, and they make big power plants that make electricity. And I had I was on a board, a communications board. This happened to be IABC, International Association of Business Communicators, still involved with PRSA, but I was on that board too. And ended up getting recruited away by a company called Honeywell. And then ultimately was recruited out of Ohio into New Jersey to work at Honeywell Corporate Communications. And this big foundation in Cleveland called the Cleveland Foundation wanted a marketer and a communicator, a PR person to head up not only their marketing, but the whole national foundation of called community foundations, 700 around the country. And somebody they talked to had known me from the IABC board and said, geez, it's a really good communicator. He's in New Jersey now, but you might be able to get him back with the right deal. And sure enough, they called me, and Bobby and Erica came with us. They remember, they were really little. They moved to New Jersey, and not long after that, we got recruited back, and we all moved right all back. Again, because somebody knew me and gave me a recommendation. And that makes it so much easier on the people doing the hiring, because they don't want to fail. So if they get a great recommendation, it makes it so much easier for them to say, yeah, let's go with this guy. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. Do you want to do this in age order? Since I'm the oldest, we'll have Bobby go next and then Erica. Bobby, talk a little bit
Sure.
about college. And since I didn't spend any time on college, you may talk a little bit about your involvement with PRSSA.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. My name is Bobby Batyko, as mentioned. Currently, I'm social media manager at University Hospitals. Graduated in 2014 from a school called Kent State University in Kent, Ohio. Popped out of there with a degree in public relations. I actually, speaking of networking and the importance of expanding your network, I got my first job out of college as a result of informational interviewing, which I think is, to be honest, I think it's super underrated. It's how I got my start, and pretty straightforward. Just figure out where you want to work, figure out who works there, that works in the public relations or the communications department. Just reach out and say, hey, I'd love to know more about the organization. I'd love to know more about what you do and what the field is like, what this industry is like. Do you have time for, a cup of coffee or lunch? Or in the current environment that we're in now, it's low hanging fruit, right? A quick Zoom call, quick just phone call, just to learn more. And when I was getting ready to graduate, it was looking pretty hard. In Cleveland, we have a lot of PR agencies. So I set up a number of informational interviews at a number of PR agencies. And this was probably started about 6 months before I was going to graduate from Kent State, and met with a number of different agencies. And a couple months went by, I never really heard anything, and that was fine. I didn't go in there thinking that there was going to be a job at the other end. As a matter of fact, none of the informational interviews that I had was there in open position. It purely was just trying to get my name out there and meet some of the decision makers that represented the PR sides of these agencies. And then probably right about a month before I was going to graduate, one of the agencies that I met with reached out to me, and they said, hey, we remember that you met with the head of our PR department. We actually just had a job open up, and she was wondering if you'd still be, interested in coming in for an interview. Yeah, absolutely. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and a week before I was going to graduate, had my job lined up as the result of an informational interview that I did like 6 months before that. So I think it's huge. I think it's awesome, and I can't highly rank those enough in terms of their importance. So worked at a PR agency after graduation for about 4 years. And after 4 years, I'd done pretty much everything that I wanted to do, got promoted once, and realized that, the curve was about to plateau. So it was time for the next challenge. So ended up getting recruited to a small nonprofit called the National Association of College Stores, where I was there for about a year and a half, and then wound up where I am now, which is at University Hospitals. At my current role, I oversee all of UH's social media channels. So University Hospitals is one of the larger hospital systems in the country. We have 18 hospitals, dozens and dozens and dozens of urgent cares, primary care, specialty clinics, things along those lines. As you can imagine, over the last couple months, been pretty interesting since about March of 2020, being in healthcare. Luckily, it looks like news about vaccines is obviously very, very good, but as you can imagine, it's been pretty interesting. And speaking of large national or international healthcare systems, I will go ahead and toss it over to Erica Batyko.
Well, hi, everyone. Like Bobby said, I work for a Cleveland clinic, and I actually got here in a bit of a roundabout way. So I was with Bobby at Kent State. I got my bachelor's in PR, and then I kind of took a different route. I've always wanted to work for an international company. Like, my dream would be to be able to work abroad one day. So to get some extra leverage, I stayed and I went back for my master's degree in global communication. And for us, that was a very theory-based degree. It's very different from what we're used to in PR, but I learned a lot about research that was very helpful. And same thing with networking. I had informational interviews, and I landed an internship with an agency in the area. And then I continued with them for my first full-time job. I did not love it and started job hunting a few months in, which is something I would highly, highly, highly recommend, even if you're brand new and you're at a job and it's not working out. If you were ever made promises that aren't coming true and you're like, I've only been here for a few months, but I want out, just start looking. It opens so many doors for you, even when you just have a little experience. And as I've learned, when you already have a job, people are more likely to pick up the phone and talk to you because they don't think you want anything from them at that moment, besides networking. So it worked out really well for me. I met a ton of people in the nonprofit sector. I networked with a bunch of people in PRSA. And one of the most important things you'll ever have is the friendships that you build in PRSSA, because those people will understand your career like your other friends never will. They will help you, and they know so many people, and they're the people who are going to pick up the phone when you say, I have a big interview, I need to practice, can you throw some hard questions at me? And they'll be really experienced in going onto that website, finding the keywords, and they can call you out when you miss something. It's the best coaching you'll have is from each other. So after a while, I applied for a bunch of jobs at the Cleveland Clinic. And as you'll experience with big organizations, I got absolutely no response for like 5 jobs. No one called me, nobody followed up. I just got thanks for applying. And that is something you're gonna come up against a lot. Never take it personally, just keep going. So I got picked up by Enterprise Analytics. And for the entire enterprise, Cleveland Clinic has locations throughout Ohio, throughout Florida. We're over in Nevada, in Canada, London, Abu Dhabi. So for all of those locations, my team is the core analytics team. So in the current pandemic, you've probably been seeing a lot of like dashboards showing COVID numbers and hospital resources and the just automated maps that are showing how they predict it's going to grow. That's kind of the work that my team does, along with all of the financial data for the hospital. They never had a communicator before. I am a one-person department, so it was just no networking for me. It was my resume and then knowing how to interview and interview well that helped me get the job. And it has been an adventure. I do 8 million things in my job. Most of it is PR. Every once in a while, I do stuff that's education related, HR related. So I'm a little all over the map. Being a jack of all trades is something very important in your career. So make sure, even if you have an interest in something that's completely off the radar, that doesn't seem like it's communications, get into it, get passionate about it, because it might show up in your job very unexpectedly.
So guys, talk a little bit about your experiences with PRSSA. I know you had a really good faculty advisor, for instance. Talk a little bit about your roles and how that helped you.
I'll start it off. So I was the VP of membership, and I had a wonderful time with it because besides just, collecting member dues and everything, I got to go out and meet the freshmen and new students and hunt down those older students who had not joined for 3 years for some reason. And it was really helpful because it was just relationships that I still have to this day. We helped each other through a lot of coursework, especially with our program. It's probably very similar to yours. We had to do some design. We had to do writing along with analytics, and you can always find somebody who's stronger than you in one area. So there was a lot of mentorship that went on. And like I said before, I kept those relationships throughout into my professional career, and we bump into them at PRSA meetings all the time now. And they are one of the best links for finding jobs or helping connect people to opportunities. I feel like my phone never stops ringing with my old PRSSA friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I emphasize that definitely in terms of building those relationships that stick with you. I was VP of Professional Relations, which is sort of a slam dunk when it comes to meeting people that, are around the area when you're in charge of bringing in people, right? Bringing in professionals to speak to the chapter. So it was very low hanging fruit in terms of being able to reach out and meet a lot of those people that were in the field, right? And getting that connection. And that's something that I think, whenever you have professionals that drop in for a meeting, being one of those people that sticks behind and goes up and gets a card, spends time getting to, just talk, get a little bit of FaceTime with whoever the speaker is, such a smart play, right? And then whether it's connecting with them via LinkedIn after the meeting or just, shooting a quick note if it's somebody that you'd like to keep a relationship going with, or just keep open the line of communication. Hey, met you at, tonight's PRSSA event. Really enjoyed what you had to say, and I'm just, would love to stay in touch, or if you have time to talk more. It's really, really great and easy opportunities to get that networking in. And then for me as well, ultimately I used PRSSA as a jumping point for the PRSA Cleveland chapter. I'm on the board at the moment, and PRSSA was a huge part of that, right? Getting that experience with, being on a board, working with other people, dividing up those responsibilities. Currently with my involvement with the current PRSA chapter, I continue to find it super valuable, right? And it's not even just for job hunting, just being able to connect with colleagues that are, also in your same industry, in your same profession, especially in the environment that we're in now. We're not in an office. I'm not seeing, my peers around the place. We're obviously not going out to bars. We're not networking at happy hours, right? So it's been super important to me. It's been super helpful to me to stay in touch with all of those professional contacts. Even just on a monthly basis, being able to touch base and, hey, what's your organization doing, right? How are you responding to the things that are happening? So yeah, PRSSA was super helpful. And then, I'd also encourage everybody who's getting close to graduation, stay involved, right? Stay in PRSA, because, that's the next step. And that's really how you stay in touch with all of those colleagues who are now professionals and some of those people that could ultimately become mentors.
And like from my situation right now, since I am a one-person communications department, I'm pretty isolated. I don't have somebody I can run to every day and ask questions of. So having people that I can text while at my job and be like, hey, how would you deal with this situation is invaluable. And right now, just grant each other as many favors as you can. Just whenever somebody needs help, jump in and help them, because people don't forget that. And there's a few of us that, I had somebody who I haven't talked to in at least 4 years reach out to me for a recommendation for a job. And since she helped me so much, and I remember that, I helped her immediately. And I've had people do the same thing for me where, you think it would be really awkward since you haven't talked to that person in a long time to ask a favor. But if you helped each other out in college, that's a bond that doesn't go away. And people remember that, and they'll help you so much more.
That is a cool thing. The relationships you have now, just because college ends doesn't mean those relationships necessarily end. And that's a network that you've already started building, which is fantastic. So are there any questions from any of you about anything you've heard so far? If not, I'm just going to start asking people where they're at. How many seniors do we have here? Can you raise your... Okay, and juniors? Sophomores? Cool. Any freshmen? Special thumbs up to the underclassmen. Do we still use the term? When you're a sophomore and you're involved in PRSSA, you're really thinking ahead. So good move on your part. Any questions? Any thoughts? Any tips we can give?
Erica, I had a question because you mentioned that you're interested in working abroad. I was just wondering what advice you had, because I also like to work internationally. So kind of what tips you have for navigating that route.
One of the most important things to look at is how soon you want to make the jump to be abroad. Something that's really helpful, especially right now, it gets really complicated with immigration policies, and every country has a different rule on how you can get started there. So if you really want to go over there and you want to do so when you're young, one of the easiest ways is to get your master's degree there, which I know it's very tricky with money. If you send me a message with your email later, I'll try to connect you with one of my friends, Carrie Ann. That's exactly what she did. She got her master's degree in Scotland because she got a degree in that country that pushed her above everybody else in terms of immigration slots. So then she was very easily able to land a job in London, which right now it's like you have to fight for that. So that is a really easy way to do it if you want to get started there right away. If you have a little more patience or financially it's just not going to work out right away, totally understandable. I could not, wanted to, tried to make him have me do it, but one of the easiest ways to do it that way is to work for a country that's work for a company that already has a branch in that country. With a lot of the B2B businesses, that's very easy. It's just amazing. These huge tech companies and engineering companies are based all over the world. My job at the clinic, we have a location in London that is actively starting to hire, and they're actually doing great incentive programs for employees to go over there. If I was a nurse, I'd be there now, but that's really easy because they take care of everything for you. You don't have to worry. They're right there with you to help you with the visa application and everything. You get to jump over those immigration laws because it's that company. I know like Eaton Corporation's a big one for that. There are some agencies that jump over healthcare. Healthcare is one of those where it's very, very complicated and hard to get into it. After you're a seasoned professional, it's a lot easier to get in as a young professional so that they can mold you into what they want you to be. So just think about those kind of companies, and you might have to wait a little while. You might have to be 3 to 5 years to get that experience built up, but that also means it gives you time to put money in the bank. And then you can work on that process. I do know every company is different. For my company, it's pretty much a year-long process to even start getting up there. So you'd have to apply after your first year. But it is exciting. If you have another language, or if you can start studying another language, even if you don't know one very well, but you've made the effort to kind of start that way, that's a big step up. And then another thing is just get your hands on whatever literature you can about other countries' cultures and the language barriers that people don't tell you about. Just learning, like I read those articles all the time about like British slang and how you're saying things very, very wrong. It helps phenomenally in an interview if you know that ahead of time and you've shown that you're already interested. So that way that company is not worried that you're going to get over there, you're going to have culture shock, and you're going to want to come back because you've already shown that you're invested.
America, you did a study abroad too, right?
Yeah, big one to mention. If you have the chance, it helps a lot to have that on your resume as well. It doesn't have to be a long program. I did too, because my parents love me very much. So I went to Florence, Italy for a semester because Kent State has a campus there. And I studied Italian before, so I could speak it a little while I was there. And that was a great program because we got to learn about Italian media, and we got to meet with radio stations and newspapers. So we came out of that very well-rounded. And then I went for a second time. It was a short, just 2-week trip, but it was a week in Dublin and a week in London. And that was actually put together by our PR program, which was fantastic because it was solely focused on media and learning how to work in different countries. And we got to meet with different agencies and companies there to start networking. So for a while, I was just sending them quick reminders that I exist, just in case that would have ever been an option. But that's a great way to start networking too. If you can get over there, even if you're just going on like a trip with your friends or something, flights cost a lot less than they used to. Just if you go there and you just reach out to companies and say, hey, I'm gonna be here, I'm really interested in you. It's as long as you're making it clear that you're interested in them, people love to talk about themselves. And people who are happy in their jobs can't wait to show off what they do, and they will make time for you. When I was in London, I met with a B2B agency, and I was supposed to be there for 15 minutes, and I was there for like 3 hours. And they were fantastic, and they couldn't wait to show off everything. They had a couple things that I probably shouldn't have seen, but they were so excited about their work. They were like, just don't tell anybody. And they'd walk me through these huge campaigns, and that was a great learning experience right there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And just remember, if there's a Zoom chat or something, drop me your email and I'll try to connect you with. I have one friend for sure who could help you, but I'll see if I have a couple more.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'll send that to you right now. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, of course.
So what are you guys learning about, what are they teaching you at OU about getting that first job?
I was actually my question was about that. So I'm a senior, I'm graduating in December. I will admit finding a job right now has been really hard. To all of you, I guess, what is your advice for me right now?
Networking, of course, is key. And I don't know if you have a chance to do any informational interviews, which of course now we're doing virtually. But as Bobby said, that's a little actually easier to do now. So making those contacts and using that PRSA directory to reaching out. Do you live in the area of the university? Are you from out of state? Where do you live?
I'm from Texas, but I do live here in Norman.
Okay. So, and do you have any idea where you'd like to work or you'd like to have a job?
Yeah, I feel I'm very open to everything.
Sure.
Right now, honestly, I will be honest, like I'm just trying to find a job right now. I do have certain interests, but I'm very open to anything right now. So I've been trying to keep a very open mind as well in my job search.
Well, sure. Tell me some of the things you're doing. You don't have to give me all the specifics, but just what is some of the stuff you're doing?
Well, obviously, right now I'm in the diversity inclusion director position within PRSSA. That's definitely something I'm super passionate about. Other than that, I really enjoy social media. So I know, Robert, you talked about that a little bit. Maybe you could give me some advice for that field. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But I mean, PR in general, I'm super passionate about. So
I would say probably one of the things I think that's happening now that's interesting when we look at social media is obviously, remote work is exploding. And social is like one of those jobs where you could do it from anywhere, right? I mean, like my job switched from being in office to sitting in front of my laptop, and my job changed very, very little in terms of the daily routine and responsibilities and things along those lines. So I would say, yeah, if you see a social media position open up anywhere, and anywhere in the LinkedIn job description or anywhere they mentioned that they could be open to remote, I would go for it, right? Because you might even have organizations that are looking to fill stuff for relatively short term, but you could jump in there, grab some experience, something along those lines. So I would say, yeah, if you're open to remote, I think now is a very, very interesting time to start exploring some of those positions where, in the past, they may have been looking for, we want somebody within our region. I think now there might be an opportunity to grab some of those jobs where even if they're outside of the region, but they're cool with, remote, or they're very open to that, certainly something that you could probably look at.
And guys, coming out of college, you're not very expensive. I mean, let's just face it. So a lot of companies are trying to keep their costs down. So you may be more marketable than you think, even though it never seems easy. All the three of us were all there at one time. Looking out from your college dorm or walking in out of a class and looking out to that great big world, wondering how am I ever going to get this accomplished. It all falls together. Well, Logan, you're D&I director. The incoming chair the chair-elect of PRSA National ran the D&I effort for all of PRSA. So Felicia, I think that might be a great contact for you. If you don't mind, I'd be happy to connect you to her. She is a lead communicator at a historically Black university. She's extremely well connected, and it's just one more avenue, one more person to talk to. And she's be chair-elect next year, and then she'll be chair of all of PRSA in 2022. That might be a good connection, and you have something in common right out of the gate, because you're dealing with D&I locally, and she's dealt with it nationally. So if you don't mind, I can make that connection for you.
Yeah, that actually, I think Pritch was about to hop on there. We heard from her earlier in the semester. I thought she was great. So yeah, if you would love to, set me up, that would be great.
Yeah, take the introduction.
What's that?
I said, take the introduction.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Sorry.
All the better that you heard her speak, so that'll even be better. Go ahead.
D&I is such an asset right now. Companies are realizing the value. Even like where I work, that's always been part of the mission, included diversity, but now so much more money is being funneled into it. So I know jumping on the first job is really tempting. If you need to, go for it. But I think you're probably going to see a lot more of those jobs opening up as we come out of the pandemic. I don't think it's going to be difficult for you to find a job that is social media for a company that's conscious and pushing stuff out. Like even Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's never stops. I love them. So those opportunities are going to be out there. And especially like I found in my job, since we're young, we're doing a lot of the educating of the people above us. So make sure you just keep that confidence that you know what you're talking about. And in your cover letter, if you can kind of expand on your experience with D&I and kind of just talk about what you've learned, you know, if you've done any, you know, courses or anything like that. So even if it's just a sentence or two in your resume, kind of stretching that out in the cover letter will be really helpful because that will set you apart for sure.
Speaking of which, Logan, have you run any social campaigns or any social experience?
Yeah, so actually last year, I worked for the university's diversity inclusion office. And through that, it was like, honestly, it was a perfect job for me. I was so sad to leave. They had to let me go because of everything that has happened since April. But I was in charge of creating graphics and running the social media for the office. And I loved doing that so much. And I'm kind of doing the same thing in my current job. I run the social media for a local architecture firm here.
That's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
I would say I have a lot of experience in running social media campaigns.
That's awesome. What I would recommend, just thinking of a resume here, even interviewing, but specifically for resume, if you have any engagement data, any growth data, impression data, I would throw that on your resume. It's kind of a throwaway phrase, in God we trust, all others bring data. And I love it. I'm actually trying to make it into a quilt. But so I think, if you can take any data that you have, any takeaways, I led this social campaign. We had X number of engagements, right? Or we saw our social following grow by X%, or we reached X number of unique users, right? If you can throw that on your resume, I think that makes a huge difference. I think a lot of people on their resumes, ironically, I wound up just hiring somebody a couple months ago, and I was looking through a lot of resumes, and most of them, it's like, here's what I did, right? And it just listed out responsibilities. But the ones that caught my attention were the ones that were like, I led this campaign, X number of engagements. It was X% increase over what this page was doing last month or last year or whatever. If you can include some of that proof of performance, I think that's huge. And I think that sets you apart big time from other people. And I think a ton of people that are graduating from, especially in communications programs, they want to do social media, but they have little to none other than like, yeah, I'm on TikTok, right? But that's pretty much it. So if you have legitimate concrete experience, which you definitely do, I think that's awesome. I think that sets you apart in a big way. And I would definitely include some of those metrics in your resume.
That's great advice. And people know, by the way, that you're just coming out of college. They're not expecting these incredible numbers,
Right.
But that you paid attention to the data and that you did actually were trying to measure your results. That's all they're looking for.
And I want to give you guys a heads up. Don't be hard on yourselves or, be super down if you find yourself stuck in a waiting game. I'm guilty of, I preach all the time, please don't do that. And I did it myself every single time. For example, my job, my first interview was in April and my first day was in September. So, and we have a woman we're going to bring on in a different position who has been waiting to get this job since July. It's just one of those tricky situations where, especially right now, there's probably going to be a company that wants you, and you might have to just wait it out. There is no shame whatsoever. And if you have to take just, a job you wouldn't want to take, like if you have to waitress or something for a few months or something, don't get hard on yourself. Don't think that devalues your resume at all. Everybody understands that that's the time we're in right now. So just, you can, once again, email me if you get down on yourself with the waiting, but it might happen. It's okay. If you start to freak out and a company's keeping you on the loop for a while, just reach out, ask what's going on in the process. I would not freak out unless they stop being transparent. If they're not giving you solid answers, or they're not giving you solid feedback, that's the time when you need to start looking at other offers. But right now, it's okay if that's what's happening. I stressed way too much coming out about not having a job that second in undergrad.
Thank you guys so much. That was very helpful. A little reassuring too.
Well, Erica and Bobby, I've got a quick question for you. Speaking of freaking out, two things I always tell my students when they go to an interview: confidence and passion. If you're freaking out, does that affect your confidence, and can people pick that up?
Definitely. For my job, my boss told me there were 2 reasons why I was selected over the other final candidate. One was my knowledge of the audience. And this was a big jump for me. I was going from external communications to internal communications, where I had relatively little experience. And they talk about Teradata and Tableau and SAS and Python and all of these tech things that I knew nothing about. So that helped. And then I was also just told flat out it was a personality fit, because I was confident. I was joking around with them, hazing my boss like I do every single day now. But I was able to have fun while I was interviewing with them, and I could answer serious questions and jump back. If you're nervous and you're starting to trip over your words and stuff, if you do it at first, that's fine. It's okay. People get nervous, but they want to see you become confident. When they ask questions, like I could see my boss, when I was interviewing, if I nailed a question, he would start smiling, and then he had the little fist bump going, like when I started doing really well. They want to see that it, and they want to see you like kind of take control of that room. For this job and for another job I interviewed for, which I also was offered that position, but there were about 8 people in the room each time. My final interviews for this job, I had to interview with every single executive, every single manager on my team. So they were some of the most important people, and just being able to shake off the nerves and have fun with them made the biggest difference.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think it's very easy to, as you're about to graduate, it's very easy for people who have been doing this for 5 years to be like, just have fun with it, have a good time. So obviously it's high pressure, obviously it's intense, but to Erica's point, I do think there's a lot to just, if you can, just relaxing a little bit, right? And the thing that I always thought about too is, this is as much about them recruiting you as it is you recruiting them, right? So have a bunch of questions, right? What do you want to know about that organization? What's their culture like? After COVID, are they going to be flexible in terms of work from home? You're not going to be able to see the office environment probably. So what does it look like? Just asking some of those basic questions and getting a feel for, what it's like on their end. Like I mentioned, I just went through the interview process for the first time on the other side, which was quite a learning experience for me. And that's one of the things I noticed is a lot of the people that I was interviewing, very, very similar in terms of qualifications, in terms of experience, very similar. What really set a couple of the candidates apart was just personality. And it wasn't like there wasn't one thing we were looking for. It was just the people that were relaxed, were conversational, and it became more of a conversation, more of a discussion than, back and forth. So yeah, I would say just the more relaxed and conversational you can be, obviously answer any questions that they have. And then the other thing I would say too is know what you want to say. go over some of the obvious questions, but I wouldn't memorize anything, right? Because problem is if you try and memorize an answer and then you slip up on a word, now you're chasing back and you're like, oh wait, where did I leave off, right? So I would say don't memorize anything, just key bullet points, right? Okay, so if they ask about this, then I'm gonna say this. And then I also think too, the big thing with me that I found really refreshing with some of the candidates I was interviewing is just honesty, transparency when it comes to questions like, hey, what's your biggest weakness, right? What's one thing that you would like to work on? And there were a couple people that gave answers that were like, oh, I just work too hard. Okay, right? But the people that were just really open, really honest, you know, like just you know, to me that made a huge difference. When it was like, okay, cool, this is somebody who I want on my team who's going to be just, you know, honest, refreshing, transparent, right? And then when it comes to humor, if there's an opportunity, cool. Obviously, you don't want to come in too loose or you don't want to be inappropriate. Having said that, you know, again, be relaxed, laugh, you know. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it. Just as much as you can, relax and have a good time with it. And I do think that when it comes to the current environment with Zoom interviews and stuff like that. To me, I found it to be more relaxing than when I was in an environment, right? If you can do an interview from your living room, you know, have a chance to kind of unwind a little bit and be a little less formal in that regard. So I think that can be potentially helpful too. But yeah. So but basically, yes, I agree with Erica.
And a couple of tricks that I had, I used to teach speech when I was a grad student, and some things that just are so simple, but they help a lot, are wear the outfit that you're gonna wear on the interview day when you're practicing for your interview. The fewer new objects you have, the better. So ladies, do your hair and makeup the way you're gonna do for your interview, put your outfit on, practice. That will help take some of the stress away. Write your notes down, take your questions with you. It's okay if you walk in with a notepad. It actually shows that you're taking things very seriously. I always had my students do what I refer to as the Beyonce method, which is before she goes out on stage, she gives herself 60 seconds to just feel all the panic and all the nerves possible. Do that in your car before you walk in. Let yourself have a full-blown 60-second panic attack so you just get those emotions out of the way and then go in. And then to make sure that you're showing that you're invested, talk about career development and talk about how, you know, you want to become better, that, you know, just you can be open with the fact that you're good at what you want to do. You want to be great at what you do. So how can you do that in this job? So that shows people that you're not going to be a flight. You're not going to be somebody who's there for a year and out, that you want to stay with them for a long term. So that makes them want to invest in you more.
I'd say too, just adding on to that quickly, you know, when it comes to social media specifically, none of the people that I was interviewing, I didn't ask any of them, like, you know, what did you think when you looked at our social channels, right? Because like if they had time to look at it, cool, but if they didn't, I also understood that. But I would say if you're looking at a social media role or something along those lines, or even just a basic PR role, but maybe a little more social specifically, go ahead and take a look, obviously, at that organization's social media channels. And I would have a pretty good answer in terms of, you know, eventually, I imagine at some point somebody would ask, well, what do you think of our social channels, right? And feel free to be complimentary, of course, but I'd also have some pretty, you know, good answers, maybe even borderline constructive criticism on, have you thought about X, Y, and Z? Or I'd be very interested in learning more about this or exploring this opportunity. Doesn't look like we have a huge presence there. Because ultimately, right, if I'm hiring for a social gig, I don't want somebody that's going to keep doing what we're already doing. I want somebody who's going to bring fresh ideas to the table and a new approach. So I'd say if you can, you know, here are 3 or 4 things that, you know, I thought of your organization immediately, and it's like, doesn't look like we're doing these things now. You know, I'd love to try those, you know. So things along those lines, I think, can help.
I tell you, you're not going to get every job you apply for. And I think as important as learning how to get that first job is learning how to deal with yourself when you don't get that job you apply for. I'm 30 plus years into my career, and I can tell you, and I'm not just saying this, I'm trying to make you feel better, every job I didn't get, it was because the job I ultimately did get was so much better. It really does happen that way. Trust me, it really does. So when you're rejected, and a lot of times when you're rejected, it's a good thing. I know that sounds horrible, but it might be that the organization said, we just have the chemistry with this person. Probably doing you a favor. Because if you end up at that organization, as Erica experienced in her own life, and it just isn't a fit, it's not nice. It's just not pleasant, is it, Erica?
It's horrible, and when you're in a bad fit, it affects everything because it's your mental health and then it hits your physical health.
Mhm.
And then you start to spiral. If I could go back to myself, I would have told myself just to quit and just, you know what, if you have to move back home, you have to move back home. But you need to take care of yourself, and you need to make sure, turns out when you're a young professional, people are going to take advantage of you. So if you're starting to work 12-hour days, if your pay is not changing, if you're getting yelled at all the time, something's wrong. The boss I have right now is just phenomenal. And I realized in the interview process what kind of boss he was going to be. So these are like things to look for. When he was asking me questions and when he would challenge the answers I gave, he was never doing so in a condescending way. He was trying to challenge and just see what I could do. And I noticed, you know, his facial reactions, the way he would start smiling when I got something right, or the way he'd make eye contact with somebody else in the room. One of the first things he told me was that at our hospital at Cleveland Clinic, we do things together. So he said, if I'm there and I decide that I don't want to do communications anymore, I want to be an analyst, he said, great, I'll help you do that. We'll do that together. And he said, and if you decide that this isn't a fit for you and you want to go somewhere else, let me know. We do that together too. That support right away was huge. When it came to career development, he was completely transparent with me. And he said, you know, I'm not a communicator. I can't help you. I will give you all the support you need to do your job here. I will help you make connections, but I'm going to need you to be the one to take the responsibility of finding a mentor. And that was huge because he wasn't, you know, painting this pretty picture for me. He just gave it to me straight. And another thing I noticed, which was something that I value very deeply, is he knew how to break the tension in a room. So when I was interviewing, questions were starting to get really, you know, intense. I had all of these senior leaders who are used to this kind of getting in there, and he would stop and make a joke, and everybody would just laugh for a second, but he could control that room, and he knew how to bring the temperature down. And now when I'm in meetings with him and things are getting heated, it's something that I value so much that even when it's a rough day, everybody leaves laughing. Everybody has a good time. And that makes you able to get up and do your job again the next day. So those are big things to keep in mind when you're interviewing. Like, make sure that person is being sincere to you.
You're right, Erica. A great boss makes all the difference. You know, Bobby just got promoted. Just the promotion letter just came out this week that was sent to his colleagues within university hospitals. And that letter that his boss wrote about him was just spectacular. He should put it on the wall. You ought to quote that, buddy. It was, but that relationship between boss and employee makes just all the difference in the world. So chemistry is so important. So, okay, guys, I think we're told to go 45 minutes. We've kind of blown past that. Are we? I don't want to overstay our welcome here because I know you got a life too.
Y'all are more than welcome to stay. I know I'm getting a lot of this because I'm interviewing next week for a position, so I had questions about that. If
We're not going anywhere. It's COVID out there. We're not going anywhere.
Nobody can lie and be like, "Oh, I have some place to be right now." Like
At one point, Erica's like mental and physical health, and I was like, I remember February. That ruled. So good. Oh.
But anybody else, I mean, I know we've hit close to our hour that we normally go. You're more than welcome to stay on, guys. If you need to go do something in the COVID world, you're more than welcome to do that. But if you guys are willing to stay on and keep answering questions, I know I have some, and others may as well.
We'll stay for a little long. We just don't want anybody to feel like they have to stay. If you got to go ahead. We don't mind.
I may jump out here at some point and go have some dinner, but
sure.
This has been awesome. You guys are very, very candid. very transparent, some great answers. This has been very, very helpful to us, and I appreciate it very much.
Rich, it's just a joy to see you, man. Stay in touch.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You guys pepper them with questions, all right?
Bye, Rich. Have a
can
good
do it.
Thanksgiving.
Ready to execute.
All right.
All right, so Steven, tell us about this job.
Yeah, so I'm interviewing for a full-time position with the company that I've been interning with for the last year and a half. I spent the last 2 summers with them, and then I've stayed on with them this fall. It's not really a PR role. The last three internships have been operations. It's golf operations, so I'm running golf tournaments pretty much every weekend over the summer. It's pretty much every day of the week. But I'm interviewing for a full-time position with them next week. They asked me to interview. They encouraged me to apply. So I don't know how to approach it with. Basically, they've been my bosses for the last year and a half, but they don't act like bosses. You know, it's you go in there and ask a friend, or just hanging out with them when we're at work. So I don't. How do I approach that? Well, obviously, still being professional, but having that relationship with them already, and how do I set myself apart even further in the interview and as a strong candidate, even though they're going to already have some preset, maybe bias isn't the right word, but preset mindsets about how I work and how I go about things.
Well, now that Pritch is gone, we can get really serious. Do you have any dirt on the other candidates? We can help you destroy them. No, seriously. That's an interesting situation when you're interviewing a job where you already know the people. How do you differentiate? In your case, it's you're bringing a lot of, I don't know who your competitors are. You may not know either, but you're coming out of a great college. You've got an incredible, strong education behind you, let alone it's in PR. And there's so many PR skills that translate into running tournaments and doing the things that you're doing, because it's all about, sure, it's all about execution, but it's also all about relationships and nourishing people and building something. Because every year, I'm assuming the tournament's supposed to be better than they were the last year. So I think you're smart about taking the professional approach to it, even if you know them and you guys kid around and maybe had beers together, whatever. Take a professional approach. And Bobby said earlier, maybe you come in with some ideas that I've been thinking about. I wonder if we could do this. I wonder if we could do that. I obviously don't know your exact situation, but those are the kinds of things I would be looking for, even if I had worked with you in the past. What are you going to do now? We know what you've done so far, but what are you going to do now? And I think coming with some ideas would be very helpful, and acting professional. And I tell you what, it is a time to brag about yourself. Who knows if they know everything there is to know about you? I mean, there may be skills that you have that you can bring in PR and social or whatever, that I'm assuming they don't have a communications team. Where do they?
They do. It just got downside. Well, one person left, so it's only 2 people, and typically it's a 3-person department. So that is open. We're not doing a ton of stuff. It's social. There's stuff that could definitely be improved, but this job would not be in that department.
Understood. But
specifically.
I understand, but I think you'd augment that. You know what that department does. You would know how to help them, whether or not they're, you'd give them, you'd be like another wheel. If they're a tricycle and they just lost a wheel, you have skill sets that they could probably use, even though that isn't your job. I mean, look, I have a feeling you wear a lot of hats in smaller organizations, right? That's just the way it works. It's like the nonprofit world. Bobby, Erica, any other ideas?
No, I think that's awesome. And yeah, I agree. I think that's the beauty of this degree is you can do pretty much anything you want with it. I think it applies beautifully to a number of different things. Like when I look at my career, I started and I was doing a lot of traditional PR. I was doing a lot of media relations. And then, for the past, what has it been now? Geez, like 4 or 5 years now. Now it took a shift and now it's all pretty much social media. So I think, I agree. I think, I think coming to the table with, here are, like, you know, if I'm given this position, here are the things I'll do now. I think that's a great idea. I would do the same.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good way to approach it. Coming with ideas already. Obviously, they haven't given me any clue of what they're going to ask. They've just given me, hey, it's going to be these people and it's going to last this long. Because there wasn't a preliminary interview because they already knew me. They just kind of brought me on to the second round.
Sure.
And then there'll be a third round after that. But so just come in with ideas, prepared, ready to go.
That brings up an interesting thing, just related to that, in case it's helpful. A common question, right? What salary are you expecting, right? Where do you want to start? And while, you know, any numbers are acceptable, I would say for your first gig, I think even just anything competitive is a pretty good answer, and it helps you avoid giving a number. When I was starting, I tried to avoid bracketing myself into, here's what I'm looking for. So I think just leading with anything competitive, and if they come back with a number that's just way, way off, not meant to be. I think generally that's a pretty safe answer.
Yeah, they've already given me a number. It's
cool. Nice.
And unfortunately, there's not much room for growth within that number, like within the company. And this could also be a role that would be a stepping stone to go from the section level up to PJ headquarters eventually after that. And then, Eric, I know you kind of talked about the waiting game, and don't fall trap to the waiting game. Like, I applied to another position as well for a one-time event for the senior PGA championship. And like, we're waiting on, and the person I've been interviewing with is waiting on an official job description from HR and headquarters. So we're kind of playing that waiting game, I guess, with HR, waiting for them to approve everything. How do I approach it if, say I get an offer for one position, but I'm still in the later phases of interviewing with the other position? How do I go about approaching that?
That one gets tricky. The big thing is for the other one to just check in, not be annoyance, but like every week, every other week, just share that you're excited about the position. You can't wait to hear back from them. You know, just a quick 1 or 2 sentence email to kind of raise your hand and say, I'm still here, I'm still interested, to kind of motivate them. I don't know. Would either of you say, should he mention that somebody else is interested, to kind of?
I had a buddy who took it to the extreme, and he was interviewing at an agency I was at, and he goes, hey, been a great interview. I got a thing lined up this afternoon. Pretty sure you're going to give me an offer. So, you know, so now I don't know if I'd recommend that approach, but I do think, though, I think it just depends on, like Erica's point, I think it depends on what's offer B, right? If offer B is really sweet and you would go there if it wasn't for this other thing, and you want to put all the chips on the table and be like, hey, like, I got this other thing and it's pretty sweet, you know. I don't think, you know, I don't think that works against you necessarily if you're trying to expedite things. Having said that, if offer B isn't something that you really love and your heart's not really in it and you'd rather just wait for the other thing, there might be something to waiting for the other thing. I think it just depends on what are the two offers and how strongly do you feel about, you know, A versus B. I think that's going to really drive kind of your negotiation there. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to say, it boils down to your ability. I mean, can you wait it out? I mean,
yeah, good point.
You need the income now, then the bird in the hand, right? Might be worth doing that. What gets tricky is if you take that job and then suddenly the other one becomes available 2 months later, you know, and they want you. You walk out of that first. I mean, that gets ugly on resumes. But sorry, there's no easy to answer that one. Hopefully they'll come.
The second one is like relatively short term. Obviously, I'm waiting on that official description from HR, but there's definitely a path for then that to become a long-term gig, and it would be already up with headquarters instead of down at the section level. So option B could, boom, pop me up there much quicker.
Yeah.
We just still just waiting on HR at this point. So
I think checking in is a good suggestion. Can't hurt.
Awesome.
Yeah. And to Erica's point earlier, like, you know, The other thing too is I'm a big fan of probably better vernacular for this, but the shotgun approach, right? Which is just start applying like crazy and then start to see what lines up, start to see what comes back to you. And this is, this is assuming there's not one organization you're really dying to work for, but even if there is, right, just keep applying. And if an organization tells you, cool, we're going to get back to you in a month, just assume that's a lie and just keep applying, just keep going, right? Don't wait on anybody, just assume never going to hear from them again and just keep on going. And if you want to check back, cool, good idea, but I would just keep going.
Awesome.
Any other questions, gang?
I am an avid reader, so I was going to ask, do you have any book recommendations for PR students or young professionals?
Mm-hmm. Guys, go ahead.
Well, what area are you interested in? Like where do you want to go with PR?
Anything. So if there was, anything that you would recommend for, if it's like self-help, leadership, anything like that, I'm open. I like all books.
One of my big things, it's not a book, is the issues and trends that comes out from PRSSA, because since our industry changes like crazy and it's just so fast, if you read all the links, it takes a while, but that helps you get ahead very quickly because you're starting to learn what the trends are, and you just you can't get that out of a book right now. So that's one of my big ones. I can't think off of the top of my head. I mean,
I read
the classic PR books.
I was just going to say I read a lot, but what I read a lot of is the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Time, the Atlantic. I mean, so they're not self-help books. I hear you. I'm not answering your question directly, but it makes sure that I'm up to date and I'm current on what's happening, because you never know, and especially in an interview situation, what's something you might have read a week ago in the journal suddenly becomes relevant in a conversation that indicates that you're up to date, you're paying attention to what's happening in the world. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. My morning routine is coffee, and the New York Times sends out a daily morning brief, which is basically just lists out, here are the 6 things that are going on in the world, and just go down that, figure out what's going on, and then go from there. And I happen to know, by the way, that if you have a trial to the New York Times and then you go to cancel that, and the reason you give is it's too expensive, they may give you that trial rate for the rest of the year. I just happen to know that on background. But yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I do think I'm actually going to look into that. Like, that's a great question in terms of, like, as a new professional, what should I be reading? I might circle back around with this group, because I think that's a great answer. I'd like to see what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And one that's not PR related, but that I really liked, was The Subtle Art of Not Giving a, want to drop the F word on here, but it was actually really good, and it was kind of eye-opening when you listen to it. You're like, oh, I do that all the time. I also got the book, have to go look off my bookshelf what the name of it is, but have you heard of the Daily Skim?
Yes.
Their book they came out with, I can't think of the title right now, but it's all like these adulting tips, was fantastic. It's on everything from like doing your taxes to eating healthy to just functioning like a normal adult. It was really helpful, and they're so funny in their writing that, like, they're kind of like joking about the fact that, yes, we're teaching you this from a book, the irony, but that one was really good, and it was a lot of fun to read, and I still flip back every once in a while when I'm doing something new, or like just networking tips, all the way to, oh my gosh, I got to do my taxes, I left this to the last minute, what do I do? It's really helpful to just keep going back to it.
Awesome, thank you.
And then once you decide kind of what area you want to go in, that's where your reading will really take off. My master's degree, I actually focus on media representation and framing of refugees. So if you look at my bookshelf, that's what you see right now. It's a ton of just international works. I love Half the Sky which is written by 2 Nobel Prize Peace winners who talk about women across the world. Right now, since I'm in a heavy data analytics area, I have a bunch of books on that. So even though they're not PR specific, I can start having conversations with my colleagues and actually understand what they're talking about, which is really helpful. Like whatever company you end up in, even if you're in the communications department, but if you can figure out more about that industry, start setting you apart, and people will notice in meetings and just, hall chit chat that you know what you're talking about.
Any other questions, gang? Well, listen, this has been great. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time. We hope we give you some ideas, some tips, some hope, some energy. You're at a phenomenal school. You're in an amazing program. You have an awesome advisor. I mean, you guys don't know how good you have it. That sounds negative. You guys have it very good. And I'm proud of all you for being in PRSSA. Stick with PRSA. When you make the jump, we make it very affordable for you to do that. And we're not vanishing off the face of the earth after this. So if you want to reach out to us, any one of us or all of us, don't hesitate to do that. We're more than happy to keep the conversation going.
And if you forget about us and remember us in 2 months, we are not going to judge you for having waited that long to reach out. It's fine. We understand it's crazy time. You're in school, you have exams. So we're not going to say no. We're not going to leave you unread. So feel free to reach out whenever you need us.
Thank you all very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
There's been a lot of good insights.
Thank you very much.
We're going to
We'll
drop
be
off.
reaching out. Okay.
All right,
Thank
take
you
care.
all.
Bye. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was so nice.
They were so good. Oh my
You
god.
were golden. Like, I need